Page 188. Down at the bottom. S-A-N-I El-He Harim. S-A-N-I El-He Harim. Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri. Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri. Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri. Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri. S-A-N-I El-He Harim. S-A-N-I El-He Harim. Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri. Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri. Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri. Me'ayin Yavo, Yavo Ezri. Where will my help come from? Where will my help come from? My help will come from God, maker of heaven and earth. My help will come from God, maker of heaven and earth. Where will my help come from? Where will my help come from? S-A-N-I El-He Harim. S-A-N-I El-He Harim.
Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos to all of you, and welcome back to CBS. It's great to see you this week. We didn't have too much rain, so we've been able to dry out, but I know that the rain was very welcome for our community, and luckily we didn't have flooding that was too bad. So hopefully the winter is off to a good start. I'm going to offer a more formal introduction a little bit later, but I wanted to acknowledge our guest speaker tonight, Omar Salem, who I've known for almost 6 years now, and who is not just a friend of mine, but a friend of our congregation. So I'll talk a little bit more about Omar later, but we're really happy that you're with us. Thank you. To start our Shabbat service, I'd like to invite Judy Nystrom and Ann Persolay to come to the bima to light our Shabbat candles. We've moved them over to this side to, is this stage right? Or stage left? Stage right. See, in New York, when I used to live in New York, everyone would know what that was. This is stage right.
Usually on the right.
We used to have it over here, but the ventilation created some issues.
See, I only knew from Snagglepuss. I think he exit stage left.
Right.
You know, it's
So go ahead. If you want to follow the blessing, it's on page 120.
I don't know how this works. Do you? We didn't have a lesson. I'll do this. Yes. I like the big lighter. Okay. Whoops. Oh, delayed. Debbie always cuts the wig. Oh, wow. You want to chant it? Sure. Okay. Gordon, are you going to play?
Sure. Gonna sing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik Lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Thank you. We're going to turn to page 142 and sing, I was going to say an oldie but a goodie, but this is actually a pretty new song in the Jewish tradition, new meaning it's 400 years old, and that's Shalom Alechem, a song about peace, and we all need peace in a time like this. Page 142.
Shalom Alechem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hakuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zeichem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
46. If you are able, please rise.
La 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 Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Page 149 in English. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai HaMa'ariv Aravim. Page 151, again, please join me. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem, Kevod Mahuto, Leolam Va'ed. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavacha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam la'ot al yadecha v'hayu latotafot beinenecha uktavtam al mazot beitecha uvisharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Page 158. You know, one thing that the three Abrahamic traditions share in common is a belief in redemption, the belief in God's redemptive power. And arguably, one of the earliest moments where we see that, at least in Scripture, is right here, when God, through the hand of Moses and in celebration with his sister Miriam, helped the people of Israel to cross the Sea of Reeds. And when they get to the other side and begin their 40-year journey through the desert toward the Promised Land, they sing this song, Mi Chamocha. It probably sounded a little bit different than the way Gordon's going to sing it
I was
now,
there.
But he
It
was
was-
there, so who knows?
This is exactly,
How old are you again?
well, I don't like to talk about my age, but this is exactly what we
This is what it
sang
sounded
when we
like.
were, yes,
Okay.
yes. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora ose Nora ose Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed malchutecha ra'uvanecha Ukei hayam lifnei Moshe uMiriam Ze Elianu ve'amru Ze Elianu ve'amru Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh.
Page 161. Please join me at the top of the page. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom. V'hamidenu shomreinu l'chayim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom. Amidenu Shomreinu L'chaim Ufros Aleinu Sukat Shlomecha Ufros Aleinu Sukat Shlomecha Amen. Shelter us beneath your wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 Amen, 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 amen.
Please take a moment now for your own silent thoughts and prayers.
Page 162. Vishamru V'nei Yisrael Vishamru V'nei Yisrael Et HaShabbat La'asod Et HaShabbat La'asod Et HaShabbat L'Dorotam Berito Lam Lai La La Lai Lai La La Lai Lai La La Lai Beini Uvein B'nei Yisrael Oti Le'olam Beini Oti B'nei Yisrael Oti Le'olam Vishamru B'nei Yisrael Vishamru V'nei Yisrael Et HaShabbat La'asot Et HaShabbat La'asot Et HaShabbat L'Dorotam Berito Lam Lai La La Lai Lai La La Lai La 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 Lai Ki Sheshet Yamim Asa Adonai Et Hashamayim Ve'et Ha'aretz Vishamru Yisrael Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat La'asot et HaShabbat La'asot et HaShabbat L'dorotam Ritolam lai la 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 Vishamru.
We pause now to think of those in need of healing on this Shabbat, healing of body, healing of spirit, and healing of heart. And we ask God to bestow the bracha, the blessing of refuah shlema, full and complete healing on the following members of our congregation or those known and loved by our community. Ilana Massey, Kevin Brackett, Michelle Camissia, Joshua Hyman, Diane Butler, Jesse Friedman, Marjorie Gilberg, Michael Blend, Jim Mates, Janet Marbury, Harriet Lehman, Brenda Flood, Bob Massey, Bill Lenish, Sharon Blevis, Sharon Hagan, Joan Elson, Michael Edwards, and Alan Goldstein. And if anyone has a name they wish to add to this list, I invite you to please do so.
Yeah, my uncle Freddie Goldman.
The Misha Barak prayer is on page 511.
Mishe Berach Avoteinu Mishe Berach Ve'imotenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu yivarech et hacholim Mishe berach avotenu Mishe berach ve'imotenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu yivarech et hacholim.
We turn now to page 586 for our concluding prayer, the Aleinu. Please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol Lateit gedula liotzer breshit Shelo asanu kegarir haratzot Velo hosamanu kamishpachot ha'adama Shelo sam chelkenu kahem V'gora leinu kechol hamonam Va'anachnu korim Umishtachavim umodim Lifnei melech Malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
It is my honor and privilege to invite up CBS President Roberta Solomon to share some important announcements with you. And I have to say, being a synagogue president is not an easy job. And you're a volunteer. And a lot of what happens with a synagogue president is you field complaints from people. But I think our community is pretty good, and I think people are pretty happy, more or less, with what we're up to. You've only been president 6 or 7 months. 6? 7? 7. And I just want to say, because synagogue presidents don't always get a lot of direct appreciation, you've done such a great job already, only halfway through your first year, and I'm very grateful for all that you do for us. So now you get to read some announcements.
Well, it helps to have a really good support system, for one thing, and a really good board as well, I have to say. So, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
I love the note here, take Chalad Oneg, in case we forget. Good evening, announcements. Torah study is tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Religious school, Shorashim, and coffee and chat with Rabbi and myself will be back this Sunday, the 22nd, at 9:30 a.m. at CBS. Monday, the 23rd, at 7 p.m., Soul Sisters Book Club will be on Zoom reviewing Duet, a musical case by Batya Gur. Wednesday, the 25th, Judaism is back with Mara Blevis making Mandelbrot beginning at 7 p.m. in the CBS kitchen. Yum. For the final Shabbat in January, join in a special service and light meal in honor of Education Director Leah Savage's engagement. Yes, exciting, very exciting. RSVP online so we can ensure that there's enough food for everyone. Our first Shabbat of February will be the annual highest refugee service with our own Refugee Resettlement Fund head, Marlo Cohen, speaking. And the oneg to follow is in honor of Harriet Spitz's birthday. Don't forget, February 11th, we have Judo, Jewdo there, with the Second Saturday Tribe. Rabbi will be teaching basic martial arts, so wear comfortable clothing. Please RSVP online. We'd like to give warm wishes to this week's birthdays and anniversaries. Happy birthday to Ellen Elson, Carla Del Porto, Lola Safer, Ari Loring, Henny Cohen, Judy Bisel, Gwen Riendo, and Audrey Lieberstein, 98th. Yeah. And then happy anniversary to Anthony and Kim Borders, their 44th anniversary. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you very much.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Our thoughts turn now to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and of death. We honor those who have died during the past 12 months. Clark Smith, Stephanie Rab Axner, David Ernesto Kaplan, Pat Pate, Annette Goldberg, Maggie Sherman, Sandra Banco-Fichtenberg, Nicholas Huff, George Montano, Dean Wilson, Norman Charney, David Alpert, Renee Munoz, Michael Cosson, Paul Dworsky, Ed Eston, Micah Bisel, Jill Daly Katz, Gabriel Harrison Escalera, Colonel Ed West, Joe McCaffrey, Beverly Eigner, Ruth Morlett, Lawrence Blake, Othello Thornton, and Alan Rosen. We also honor and remember the art sites, the anniversaries of the deaths of David S. Eisenstark, Diane Meyer Alcott, Mort Cohen, Robert Spitz, Miriam Garvis, Eva Finkelstein, Enoch Goldstein, my grandfather, Sidney Goldstein, Rebecca Weidler, Helen Goodman, Robert Hollingsworth, Isaac Sternclar, and David Cabilio. And if anyone has a name they wish to add to the list, I invite you to please do so. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 598. If you're able, please rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah v'alma divrach hirotei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael v'agala uv'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivorach le'alam u'lamei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh Yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all those in mourning and comfort to all those who are bereaved, and let us all say amen. Please be seated. We're going to do the Kiddush and Motzi after our guest speaker, but we're going to do a final song right now. So Omar, what would you, Omar, that's Omar.
So Omar's going to be leading us in our final song.
We didn't tell you about that.
Every guest does that.
You both have bisyllabic first names. Gordon, Omar, like kind of.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So
yeah.
Gordon, what do you want to close with tonight?
Well, Niles. I'll just leave it at that. We're going to do page 631. We're going to do a Sephardic, Ladino, Ein Kelohenu. We tried it a long time ago. We're going to just start getting familiar with it again. Do just a couple verses, and we'll start working this in. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkenu, Ein Kamoshienu. Non como nuestro Dios, non como nuestro Señor, non como nuestro Rey, non como nuestro Salvador. So instead of going to the second verse, let's try that one again so we can get the tune down. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkenu, Ein Kamoshienu. Non como nuestro Dios, non como nuestro Señor, non como nuestro Rey, non como nuestro Salvador. Next one. Mi Eloheinu, mi Adonenu, mi Malkeinu, mi Moshienu. Ken como nuestro Dios, ken como nuestro Señor, ken como nuestro Rey, ken como nuestro Salvador. One more. No del Eloheinu, no del Adonenu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshienu. Lo haremos a nuestro Dios, lo haremos a nuestro Señor, lo haremos a nuestro Rey, lo haremos a nuestro Salvador. We'll just end with the top one again. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkenu, Ein Kamoshienu. Non como nuestro Dios, non como nuestro Señor, non como nuestro Rey, non como nuestro Salvador. You heard that one before?
I have, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
Okay, you can sit.
I'm done?
You're done.
Oh,
You're done until a little bit later.
I was just getting into it. Okay.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good Shabbos. Special welcome to those of you who I haven't met before, who are here for the first time. We have a special treat tonight, as you know. Omar Salem is not just a friend of mine, but a friend of our congregation and no stranger to CBS. Omar, you and I met about 6 years ago when I first moved here, And as I've gotten to know him a little bit more, Omar truly is a Renaissance man. He's not just a police sergeant. He is a writer. He is a world traveler. And he is an active member of the Muslim community here in Napa. Omar was not always a cop. He was a chaplain at the state hospital, and he's had a very interesting journey that led him into what, in my opinion, has been a very colorful career that you've only just begun. So we are just so delighted that you're here with us. I'm going to invite you to come up, and we're going to sit up front. This is going to be the second of our series this year of Interfaith Dialogues, Faces of Faith. Some of you were here in the fall when I had a conversation with an Episcopalian minister that I thought was quite interesting. We learned a lot about her denomination and about her journey as an Episcopalian priest. Tonight we're going to talk about Islam and about your journey. And we're going to do it all in like 20 minutes.
All right.
But there is going to be time for questions at the end. So I'll make sure I don't go on far too long, even though there are lots of different questions I have for you, Omar. Let me just start by saying from what I know of you and what I've read, I don't think when you were younger, you were always an active participant in the Muslim tradition. That came a little bit later in your life, and you become, I think, much more active as you've gotten older. Can you tell us just a little bit about your journey to Islam? Because I know my journey to becoming a rabbi was a long and winding road. It didn't just happen. So could you tell us just a little bit about how you became more active in the Muslim as a Muslim?
Yeah, I, interestingly, we had this conversation with some youth last week, about 500 kids, about language. And I really thought about kind of my, where I'm from. My dad's from Baghdad, Iraq, and my mom's from Afghanistan. And they separated when I was about 5 years old. And my dad remarried when I was about 7 to my stepmom, who's from Mexico. So I speak fluent Spanish. And she was Catholic. And so I grew up, in a household that kind of celebrated Islam, but also a lot of Catholicism. And when I was in 7th grade, she said, I think I needed more discipline in my life. So I was sent to St. John's Catholic on Main Street. And I went to St. John's for 7th and 8th grade, but I really held to like my Muslim identity. So, I didn't participate in the Eucharist or go into confession. And I didn't eat pork, right? I think we all celebrate that together. And so I really had an idea of faith, but, I didn't really get that involved. And I was at the mosque one day when I was about 15, 16 years old, and they have the picture of the Kaaba. And the Kaaba's in modern-day Saudi Arabia. It's where we believe that Abraham built the house of worship. And so it's a very sacred place for us. And I looked at it and I said, I really want to go there. And at, I think, 18 years old, I went with a really good friend of mine who's recently passed, and he took me to Mecca. And I spent some time, during Ramadan actually, we were fasting, and we were in Mecca and Medina, and then it was transformational for me. And so I came back really with a lot of vigor of my faith and, who I was, my identity, who am I? I had this like crisis at 18 years old of, what am I going to do in the world? And then studied a bit, and then at 21 years old, the rabbi, I have a very long connection to the Jewish community, but the rabbi at the state hospital, I don't know how he got my number, but he reached out to me, and they have a very nice synagogue at the state hospital. The Jewish community beats the Muslim community all the time in the centers. They're all beautiful. And he said, hey, why don't you, there's no imam for the state hospital. And so I asked some of my teachers with their permission, I asked them if I could lead the Friday prayer for us as our holy day, which is called Jummah, which is on Friday. And they said, have at it. And so I spent 2 years really, it was a period of 5 years really deep into faith, but 2 years as a chaplain for the incarcerated at the state hospital. I learned a lot being with them, and then at the same time transitioning to become a police officer. So it's been a ride. That's that in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's good. Well, there are something like 1 billion Muslims in the world, from what I understand. And when you were in Saudi Arabia, obviously virtually everyone there, I assume, was Muslim, or close to everyone. Back here in Napa, we're a religious minority as Jews. You're part of a religious minority as a Muslim. So there's a real disconnect, being part of a religious minority in a small town like Napa. Do you find working at the police department or living in a place like Napa a little challenging sometimes as a member of a minority religious tradition?
I think so. I was just in Vallejo, and they have a beautiful Islamic center in Vallejo, right there. Glen Clove area has a beautiful center. And I've never seen the Islamic identity really, as far as structural and community, really blossom in Napa. And I think a lot of it's really, not to jump on this train, but a lot of it is our elders that have, they've migrated here. My father, the quote-unquote uncles of the community. And so a lot of those people fill our mosque, and there's a lot of fear, right? Hey, we're going to do our own thing. Let's not let everybody know we're here. Let's not make some noise. We'll come do our Friday prayer. And that's about it. So me and probably about a few other people, a very small number, are more of the active, we should let people know about Islam and the beauty of the tradition. And so I think there's a lot of that, and the lack of language, right? So a lot of them have a hard time speaking English and communicating and coming up here. I remember after 9/11 happened, what was I, 14 years old, in high school, they had a task force, the FBI did, and they came to different regions, and one of the regions was Napa County, and they knocked on the mosque, and they said, hey, we would like a representative from the group, and there was about 15 elder men. Omar, you go. And at 15 years old, I was at the FBI building representing Islam for the North Bay, in the sense of Napa County. And I did my part the best that I could, and it lasted a little bit. I kept in touch with actually the FBI agent, Raymond Rapp, who actually told me to become police officer. So, it's all connected, right? And ever since then, we've just been a small, quiet community, and I think it's because lack of being able to communicate and that fear, right? Islam has really been, a lot like the Jewish community. There's been a lot of fear-mongering that we're the boogeyman and that, we don't belong in certain areas, and our traditions we're here to take over, and so there's a lot of stuff like that. So our community is very, in the sense of minority community, but at the same time a very quiet one that doesn't want to really go out. And I think a lot of it's based on language and fear.
Well, you're certainly doing a lot to change that. You're out and about in the community, as I think a lot of us know. You mentioned the beauty of Islam, and I think Judaism is a beautiful religion as well, as a Jew. There are, in my opinion, three really core ideas in Judaism that help to define us. One is the idea of a belief in monotheism, ethical monotheism, the belief in a transcendent, omnipotent God. The other is the idea of justice. Justice is very much at the core of the Torah, the scroll right behind me, of our rabbinic tradition, of our community. And the third, I alluded to a little bit earlier in one of the prayers, redemption, the idea that ultimately God will redeem the world and all of us. If you could just, pick 3 or 4 core ideas of Islam, because not everyone here probably knows the fundamentals of Islam. What handful of beliefs would you say are fundamental to being a Muslim?
Yeah, I'd say ditto. Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
How much time do I have?
You're good. Yeah, you're good.
So I wrote this down, and I think it's worth sharing, and I'll share it with you. So the Quran has Islam has 2 things. One is the Quran, which is like the Torah for us, and then which was revealed 1,400 years ago. And then we have what's called the Hadith. So it's what we believe the Prophet Muhammad said. It'd be like Moses speaking, but not what God told him to say in the Torah, if that makes sense. So one of the companions of Moses saying, I heard Moses say this and this. And so there's some weak hadith, which is like some guy in the very, very back heard it, and then there's authentic. The people that were close to him heard this. And so this is a authentic narration from Umar ibn al-Khattab, which was a very close companion, one of the caliphs after the Prophet passed. And I think I'll read it, and I think it really hits what Islam is about. And you can, they've written volumes on just this hadith. So if you don't mind, I'll read it. So on the authority of Omar, who was sitting, he said, "On the day while we were sitting with the messenger of God, there came before us a man with extremely white clothing and extremely black hair. There were no signs of travel on him, and none of us knew him. And so when he came in, he sat next to the Prophet, and he supported his knees with his knees. And he put his hands on his thighs. He said, 'O Muhammad, tell me about Islam.' And he, the messenger of God, said, 'Islam is to testify that there is no God worthy of worship except God, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God, to establish prayer, to give zakat, which is charity, to fast during the month of Ramadan, and to make to the pilgrim to the house of Mecca if you have the means to do so.' The man that was sitting before him said, 'You have spoken truthfully.' We, Omar is saying this, were amazed that he asked the question and then affirmed it immediately. And then he said, 'Tell me about faith.' He, the messenger of God, responded, 'It is to believe in God, his angels, his books, his messengers, the last day, and to believe in the divine decree of both good and evil.' The man replied, 'You've spoken the truth.' And then he said, 'Tell me about what is good, what is goodness?' He, the Prophet, answered, 'It is that you worship God as if you see him, and if you don't see him, you know that he sees you.' And then he said, 'Tell me about the hour.' He, the Prophet, answered, 'The one being asked does not know more than the one who is asking.' And then he says, 'Tell me about its signs of the last hour.' He said, 'The slave girl shall give birth to her master, and you will see barefooted, destitute shepherds competing and constructing lofty buildings.' He then stood up and went away. I, Omar, stayed for a long time, and the Prophet looked at me and said, 'Oh, Omar, do you know who the questioner was?' He said, 'God and his messenger know best.' He said, 'That was Gabriel who came to teach you your religion.'" So I think in this is basically what we believe in, right? We believe in the monotheistic God. We believe in prayer and fasting and giving charity. We believe in justice. And I would just add on that is that we also believe in God's mercy. I think a lot of the Quran is riddled with God being the most merciful, the most compassionate. And so we seek God's mercy a lot in our tradition because we're not all perfect. So just to add to what you said.
Yeah, no, thank you. You know, let me ask just a couple more questions, and then I want to open up the floor. In religion, in organized religion, there's a focus on belief, and there's a focus on behavior. And a lot of people in the Jewish community tend to think, I think sometimes mistakenly, that Judaism is all about behavior, not about belief. I think it's about both. It's about what you believe, but it's also about what you do, your actions. In Islam, how is belief balanced with behavior? Is either one focused on more than the other? I mean, in Judaism, if someone believes in God and believes in prayer and holds to a lot of the classical Jewish beliefs, but is an unethical person, that person would not be well regarded in the Jewish tradition because of their behavior. So where would you say belief and behavior kind of play out in Islam?
I think very similar. Yeah, I think, not to, there's a saying within the tradition to believe in God, but tie your camel, right? Like at the same, believe that there's a God, but if you don't tie the camel's going to run away, right? As long as you pray, God, keep the camel here. As soon as you sleep, he's gone. And so you have to put in the work in the sense, right? Like belief that there is a God, but at the same time, there's some rights that are obligated upon us and that we have to do. And so that's where mercy, Rumi, the poet Rumi, says, our caravan is not a caravan of despair, right? And I always think about that is that, and I believe Rumi is referring to Islam, that even that we, make breaches in our tradition and our belief, that we don't despair from that and we don't leave, that we believe God is a merciful God. But we don't play the dice game of I'm going to continue to do and not tie the camel, hoping that everything will be okay at the end of the day. But we seek God's mercy, knowing that there's laws, but that we're not perfect. And there's a verse in the Quran that God says that if there wasn't a group of sinful people that would pray for forgiveness, he would replace them with a group that would ask for forgiveness. And so I think forgiveness and seeking God's mercy is what drives us to God personally.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we're all flawed, but we all have to do the work, and at the same time as we're praying for God to redeem us, we have to tie the camel.
That's right.
We have to do the heavy lifting ourselves.
That's going to be the quote of the night. Tie your camel.
Right, tie your
everybody.
camel. Last question before I open up the floor. Every religious tradition, at least that I'm aware of, has extremism within it, fundamentalism within it. And I know we have that in Judaism. We have a government in Israel right now that's probably the most extreme, some of its members that we've seen in the history of the country. And it pains me as a Zionist and as a rabbi to see extremism in my community. As a Muslim, how do you feel when you see extremism in the Muslim world, whether it's in this country or abroad? And is there anything you can really do about it other than, offer critique?
Yeah. Personally, they did when was it? It was 10 years after the anniversary. It was a 10-year anniversary after 9/11. And I was now a police officer. And the Napa Valley Register did an article. You can look it up. The article's still online. And about, the Register had contacted me, and I said, we should do this article so people can see that Muslims are not the boogeyman. Like, this was very fresh after 9/11. It was like the 10-year anniversary. And, we Muslim, whether you're Arab or non-Arab, we work to make our community and our country great. Like, that's our responsibility no matter where we're at. And so they did the article, and the comment section, I was in full uniform. The comment section got so bad they disabled it. You won't find the comments on anymore. And I remember reading one of them and says, where were you when 9/11 happened? And I wanted to respond back. I was 14 years old. I was a freshman at Vintage High School. And so I don't control any of these people, right? And I think the best thing that we can do is what we're doing right now, which I wasn't aware of when I was younger, is just outreach and knowing people. And so when there's extremism in the Jewish community, wherever that's at, I know many of you here. And it's like I know the Jewish people and I know the Jewish community, what they believe in. That doesn't represent who they are. And I ask you to do the same for the Islamic tradition, that, you said it, there's billions of Muslims everywhere. And we hear about terrorism because it has been carried out with people that in the name of Islam recently more than before. And so we have this idea that all Muslims are of this school of thought, and the majority is not. And we often, not to defend it, but oftentimes we see these extremist groups spark up in areas of conflict, where there's lack of teaching, lack of knowledge, and people are in poor conditions and they flock to these. When Daesh or ISIS was formed, they went into the Syrian refugee camps and they were pulling people out, saying we need to go fight and take over Syria and Iraq. And these are people that are refugees in camps. They're like, fine, we'll go. We've got nothing to lose, and created this extremist group. And so they're born from situations that I don't defend it, but I can see where this hate comes from. And the Islamic extremists were actually killing other Muslims at the time. There weren't really any attacks here. There were sympathizers, quote unquote, but the majority of the fighting was happening in lands where there was conflict. So I know I'm digressing, but we stand against any form of extremism. And I think the best thing to do is dialogue and knowing one another. That's the best that we can do. And when war happens, war is going to happen. So
I agree. It's very hard. As a member of Napa's Interfaith Clergy Council, and your imam came here last Sunday for the Martin Luther King commemoration. What's his first name again?
It's Anwar.
Anwar, yeah. He was terrific. It's hard to hate someone that you break bread with.
Yeah.
It's very hard to hate someone who you have a relationship with. I want to open up the floor. Let me grab a mic. Excuse me. And just show of hands. Let's first in the back. We'll go 1, 2, 3. Rivka, you go first. And this is mainly for people at home who are watching at home. They won't be able to hear otherwise.
Is there a simplistic way to explain what is the difference between Shia and Sunnis, and why do they hate each other?
Yeah. You know, I had a cousin come over from London recently, and you know, he identifies as Shia, and I have no idea. Like, there's a story behind this. There's no idea why. And this was like years. Last time I saw him was like maybe 15 years ago, and he came back and we were driving around. He goes, "Man," he goes, "I've been doing a lot of reflecting recently, and I'm not Shia or Sunni. I'm Muslim." And I was like, "Interesting." And I think that idea was brought forth between a political split that happened. So there was a camp, if you want to call them camps, that after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, died, there was a split of who should be in charge of the Muslims, who was really, you know, going to take over and care for the Muslim community, because there were a large community, and there was a vacuum when that leadership went away. And so some people were saying it should be Imam Ali, which is bloodline. It should be in charge. And other people were saying it should be Abu Bakr and Omar and Uthman and all these other successors that were after it. So there was a split on who, and then there was a lot of infighting that beginning to happen. And then it split, and I think you see it way more now, where people just have a belief on whose house to follow, quote unquote, and they've made it very political, Shia, Sunni. And it's really the difference is who was the successor after the Prophet has passed. And nothing has changed in the religion or the Quran. They both follow the same book. They have separated their ways as far as successor, and I think the magnitude of the Iraq War and the current, you know, their current selection of the president in Iran has a very big influence on the Shia and Sunni, which is I personally believe is political. If you ask my father and anybody else, you know, that I know, is they don't like to talk about it because it distorts the tradition. I think it's come up very recent in light, and it's basically on politics. And there's nothing that you will find within the religious text that define or say who's Shia and who's Sunni. We're all Muslim. So that's the best I can answer you on that.
Hey Omar, my name is Ohad. Salam alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Thank you so much for being here and elucidating us on some of this stuff. And I kind of want to follow up on Rifka's comment as well as Rabbi's comment, how belief needs to be reinforced with action. And obviously the Sunni and the Shia believe something different. How do they engage in acts that are different in order to reinforce their belief? Like what do they do that's different to show and reinforce their belief?
Yeah, I think there's a big influence on Ali, which is a descendant of the Prophet, peace be upon him. There's a big influence on Ali. There's the way they pray. So like some have their hands like this, cross when they pray, others with their hands onto their side. There's different, you know, like a rock or a stone that's used during prayer that is a little bit different than your normal Sunni prayer. So there's little nuances that are different. But the 99% of it, 98% of it, we all have the same belief. Like it's the same Quran, the same, that hadith, they all believe in what I just read. That's on both sides, is a belief. It really came down to the successors after the Prophet passed. That is the major difference.
Jenna?
Thank you so much for sharing. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of women or women in leadership possibility, or because I don't know about that at all. I would love to know.
Yeah, I go like, I wonder, like, what do people think about women in Islam? I don't, like, what is your view? And be honest. Is it women are a certain way, or to better answer your question?
Just wondering if they are unempowered
Okay.
and not held as equal and not given opportunity and not able to be educated. And so many things are happening today in the degradation of quality of life for women, and I just wondered, is that a part of Muslim belief?
Yeah. I think we've seen it, especially what's going on in Iran, right? Yeah, in Afghanistan. Being Afghani, that I feel that one a little bit more. So women are, I believe, and I feel awkward speaking as a male for a female. I wish I had a Muslim lady here speaking so she can answer it best than me. But I feel that women are empowered within the Islamic tradition. Jesus in the Quran is not referred to always as Jesus. He's 100% referred to as Isa ibn Maryam. He is Jesus, the son of Mary. And what gives Jesus the status is not only that he is, we believe, a messenger of God, a prophet of God, but also Maryam is his mom, right? And there's a chapter called Maryam. And if you ever see in the Catholic tradition kind of what Maryam looks like, she's covered in a sense, her hair is covered. And so women in Islam, they cover their hair, they cover their bodies, not because the man told them so, but because of religious reverence. That's within the tradition. And so I don't see anything in the Quran or that disempowers women. I see it more of an empowerment for women, if that makes sense. Does it make sense? No, she's shaking her head no.
Not as reality is unfolding today.
Yeah, in those countries. Yeah.
And can I just jump in quickly?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes what I think happens is that different cultures play out the religion in ways that are not necessarily faithful to the religion. In my opinion, I see this in Judaism. I see different Jews around the world and in Israel acting in ways that go counter to what I view as fundamental Jewish values. And what I've heard from some Muslims, Omar, I don't know if you agree, some of the ways in which women are treated, maybe in places like Afghanistan and elsewhere, they may be happening within the context of an Arab culture or a Muslim culture, but they're not really true to the principles of Islam. That's what I've
and
heard
I think, yeah, missing that piece. I think culture has a big influence. The Afghani culture, I mean, a lot of culture influences a lot of Muslims, really, to be honest with you. The Arab culture, the North African culture, Afghani culture. And so that, I see it, those waters get really muddy. And then they use the religion says, right? Islam gave the right to women to vote way before this country did. To be honest, look at history, right? Islam honored women in rights that this country didn't honor women with rights, right? I mean, so I think we get caught up in the idea of what countries do and governments do and people in power do, and then they use religion to bring in the masses, especially those that are uneducated, and they believe that, right? Not only is the people in power saying this, but they're also saying the religion is saying this, and they all agree with it, then this must be right. And so those waters do get murky a lot within culture, 100%.
Yes.
So is there a responsibility of the imams and the leadership of the religions to contradict some of that or to clarify?
Yeah, I mean, the scholars that I know really well and the imams that I know really well, they all do that. I've heard many overseas do that. There's plenty of councils that do that. But when you're talking about certain Shahs and Taliban, I mean, we went to war with these people, right? And so I can't speak for them. And I think if you speak out against them, there's a problem for you. And so a lot of people don't say a word in those lands because of fear. And so that doesn't happen in the modern Muslim world. I think Saudi Arabia has definitely made strides. I think there was a time, 100%, where women weren't able to drive. Cars weren't invented when Islam came. And to say that they can't drive, where do you get that from? Mm-hmm. I really don't know where you say that is a religious edict and that women can't drive their car. The Prophet's wife, one of his first wives, she was a businesswoman. She used to sell in the marketplace. One of the the most, she used to gain the most money out of everybody, right? And so I don't get it, where they get some of these ideas that are not based anywhere within the tradition, but they believe that, those cultural pieces get murky within the waters of a religious, of a Muslim country, if that makes sense. So.
Yeah, thank you. You know what? I'm cognizant of time. Is it a quick question? I'll let you have the last word. Wait, you need the mic. You do need the mic because there are people at home.
What I want to say is we have the same thing in our Orthodox community. Come on. Women have no rights. They have to marry who they're supposed to. They're not supposed to drive. They're supposed to dress a certain way. So we go to New York, go to Israel, see these communities. We're not so different is what I'm saying. It's just that politics has made this rise to the top and become something that has become for us an idea of that's how the Muslim community is. So
Thank you. I think just to wrap, is it really
Just not a question. So Omar, we haven't actually met in person, but I'm Marlo with the Refugee Resettlement Fund, and we spoke. And I just wanted to acknowledge publicly how incredibly wonderful you were and the leaders from your community when we were trying to bring an Afghani family here to Napa. And your willingness to talk with me and to educate me and to really be a support, it was fantastic. So just, you're really quite amazing, so thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Just to wrap, I think religion, one of the reasons I became a rabbi is because I think religion is one of the oldest and most fascinating human institutions that exist. But when politics gets mixed up with it, it can bring out the worst in people, but it can also bring out the best in people. And you're one of the best. So I really appreciate you taking your time this evening to be with us, to share some of your journey, some of your insights about your religious tradition, which I know you're very proud of. You're always welcome here.
Thank you.
And hopefully, as we did a few years ago, before COVID, maybe we'll do some other kind of a program with your mosque.
I'm going to say this now because I'm going to put him on the spot, but I really think it'd be really nice if you get an imam, a rabbi, and either a priest or pastor do something on Moses, that we can all talk about Moses, because I just want to say that the prophet that's most mentioned in the Quran is Moses, just so you know. And so Musa is the most mentioned messenger in the Quran. And so I think we share a lot more in common, really, a lot more in common than we don't. And it'd be great to have three faiths speak about their belief in Moses, and I think a lot of people would find common ground with that. So I'll leave that challenge with all of you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I missed it then.
We're going to close with the Motzi and Kiddush, so if you would please rise. And we have a nice oneg waiting for us in the back. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pari hagafen. Amen. L'chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. B'tei avon. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.